In the 1930s, New York City started experiencing the phenomenon known as white flight. Wealthy white residents started leaving the city and were moving to the suburbs. In order to combat this, New York City planners took on a modernization project to keep their preferred residents from leaving. One part of this modernization project was the Cross Bronx Expressway. The Cross Bronx Expressway was meant to ease wealthy residents' commute into the city, which it did. However, the negative consequences of the Cross Bronx Expressway are what's important. The Cross Bronx Expressway cut through the Bronx, leveled thousands of buildings, and decimated Black and Puerto Rican neighborhoods. This is a picture of the South Bronx in 1979. What should be a lot full of apartment buildings, schools, grocery stores, hospitals, is wasteland. No one can live here. Kids can't play here. It's useless, just like the kids of the Bronx were to New York City. Families were dislocated, schools closed, jobs left when buildings left. As such, crime increased as living situations and community health deteriorated. The Black and brown children of the Bronx had no one politically or in the media to cast light on their living situation. As such, they had to make their own voice. And in 1979, that voice, hip-hop, was born. While hip-hop refers to an art form that includes rapping, dancing, DJing, and graffiti, this talk refers to the verbal portion, rapping. Rapping was a form of communication, a way for these kids to talk about what was going on in their neighborhoods. Continuing in the spirit of African oral tradition, rap was a method of intergenerational storytelling. Take The Message, a song by Grandmaster Flash and Furious 5, for example. Rats in the front room, roaches in the back, junkies in the alley with a baseball bat. I tried to get away, but I wouldn't get far because the man with the tow truck repossessed my car. In times of slavery, enslaved African Americans would sing songs to each other and send decoded messages and communicate in ways where they wouldn't draw attention to themselves. Rap was the exact opposite. It was meant to draw attention. Those who were silenced by traditional means had found their own voice, a voice for the voiceless. Aside from the inherent political nature of an art form born out of Black rage and anger, there were overtly political rap acts. The most famous, perhaps, Public Enemy, a Long Island rap group fronted by New York vocalist Chuck D. With bars like, cold dwelling as I sit in my cell, how long's it been? They got me sitting in the state pen. I gotta get up, but that thought was thought before. I contemplated a plan on my cell floor. A song about Chuck D staging a prison riot and freeing his fellow inmates. Public Enemy was a rap group that made political statements every time they made music. Queen Latifah spoke about, oh, I messed it up. My bad, yo, technology is not my thing. Queen Latifah spoke about Black liberation from a feminist perspective. With songs like Ladies First, with Moni Love, with lines that go, some say that we can't flow, stereotypes, they got to go. Ah, my bad. I'ma mess around and flip the scene into verse with what? With a touch of Ladies First. Rappers realized they literally had global platforms to speak on issues that affected them and spread awareness to the injustices they faced. Since many rappers came from living situations similar to the South Bronx in 1979, speaking on issues like police brutality, systemic racism, and poverty was not that difficult. Even today, we have quote-unquote conscious rappers with names like Common, Talib Kweli, Mick Jenkins, Immortal Techniques, Know the Product, even Kendrick Lamar, everyone's favorite. But the question I ask myself, is there political value in rap acts that aren't overtly political themselves? Dr. Mark Lamont Hill once said that rap is a revolutionary art form missing revolutionary content. And there's validity to that statement. Forces of capitalism have commercialized rap and hip-hop culture to make it more accessible to the mainstream, aka whites, and it's hard to ignore that, the misogyny, hypermasculinity, homophobia, and transphobia that's in much of popular rap music. However, at its very core, hip hop does exactly what it was meant to do: give a voice to those who don't have a voice, give a voice to people who have been marginalized by society, specifically us as black people. Rap was created as a counterculture to a society that had first turned its nose up at black and brown youth of the Bronx. To them, to rap was to show resistance. And that's not to say we should not critique our artists who don't use their platform to speak up, or worse, use their platform to spread hate and discrimination. Beyond critiquing what's out there, we have to demand better of our artists who our support turns into millionaires and billionaires. But at the end of the day, when you hear a rapper, no matter how devoid of substance their content is, that rapper is speaking out. And even if they're not speaking out overtly, the symbolism of how they do it, what they wear, how they say it, that in itself can be seen as political. Hip hop is just one of many voices us as black people use to speak out. But we must always remember to use that voice for good, to use it for constructive manners. Because after all, hip hop is a black voice. Thank you.